Welcome back to another exciting episode of The Great Futures Forge. This is episode 13, and we are here with, yet again, another community partner spotlight. So, please tell us who you are.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Alia Berry, and I am a licensed community social worker in the city of Newark.
Is that's title is like, by trade.
Yes.
But let's talk about what you actually do.
Okay. Not by trade.
Not by trade, because we know. I guess we know what social workers do, but we had a segment with Kimberly Alfonso, our licensed social worker, so we know what social workers do, right? But what do you do?
Right. So one is community based, right? For me is social work is more than like a 9 to 5. It's more than 4 walls of an agency. It is really more so a lifestyle for me. And so what community-based to me looks like is goal setting on the sidewalk, baby showers, graduations, unfortunately funerals or sentencing hearings, being in all the places where this kind of work shows up. And so that is community-based for me. But yes, the letters behind my name say social work license credentialed, but I am community-based. And I actually came into the work before I got the credential just by way of the community. And I always say, like, the community raised me in this work.
Right.
And then I got the credentials later. So
that's right. Because you do a lot of things, and you kind of like sprinkle them in there really fast. And there were like a bunch of different things like baby showers and funerals and, showing up on the street. So let's start there, actually, because I think that'll help kind of let people understand what you actually do, because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people go to the office, they go to the 4 walls, they meet with somebody across the table, they write some notes, they move on to the next person. You do that, but you also show up. And why do you show up the way you do?
I've been working for 25 years, over with 0 to 75 years old, individuals, whether it's been in schools or group homes or shelters, correctional facilities, a whole bunch of different places doing a bunch of different things. I would say the why I show up the way I do is because the breadth of this work is bigger than an office or an agency. There's also a whole, faction of the community that will never walk through the doors of your agency. And so at that point, like, sometimes you need to meet folks where they are, literally. That they teach us that in social work school, right? Like, meet clients where they are.
Right.
But like, sometimes community-based work requires that you literally meet them where they are. And that can be on a sidewalk. That can be at a candlelight on a Sunday, right? Like, doing healing work in community where community is. And then ultimately, could you get them to your agency and to your desk or whatever? Maybe, right? Like, maybe we're running a program in my agency, an agency that someone would come to. But sometimes, you do have to meet folks like literally where they are. So I would say that's kind of like the why.
So you said an interesting word, which you don't hear very often. I'm a video gamer in my past, and you hear factions and games like Age of Empires, these strategy games around historical figures. What are these factions that won't probably won't, until you develop your relationship, walk through the 4 doors?
So out of my 25 years, I would say about the last 15, going on 20 years, I've been working with individuals before, during, and after incarceration. So the before incarceration, like I said, it may be the sidewalk, it may be in schools. I was a school social worker and a teacher for a long time. So a lot of kids I knew from schools, from Boys and Girls Clubs and summer camps and after school programs. So the before, right? And then during incarceration, I've worked the last 10 years part-time in a correctional facility. Still work there, like went there last night. And so, those individuals are there. We're literally meeting them where they are. And then I do reentry work. So I have built some reentry programs from scratch. I've worked for reentry programs. And so my kind of lane is healing the emotional roots of violence. Which I know we're going to get like more into, but that's kind of been my lane. And so that is the group of community members that I'm talking about, because systems have harmed them. Community has harmed them. They've gone through trauma that would sometimes poses as a barrier to come through your agency door.
Right.
the actual emotional root that we're working on healing is the barrier to come through your agency door. Therefore, we need to go to where that person is, heal that root, as you said, build that relationship enough for you to then come into our fold.
Right. So let's jump forward a little bit, because we went back, and I don't want to get too deep into saying what I know, because I want you to tell your story, but you started something and it has a very interesting concept, and I want you to talk about it, tell people what it is, and explain it, because I think you've gone into why you're doing it, but I think there's a deeper kind of explanation that you can give about this organization that you're running.
Yeah. So the organization that I founded, and I'm an executive director, is called the Village Revival Project. And so I'm going to say it's kind of new because we're just starting programming. We've been doing community engagement events like the last year or so, but we've been building it for like about 4 or 5 years, but we are now like really the vision is coming to pass. But so the Village Revival Project essentially is an arts organization that works to humanize the relationship between individuals on both sides of violence. And so just bringing to my experience, like my experience has been the last 15 years or so, found on both sides of harm. So like I can, be working with a mom who has lost her son to gun violence on a Monday night, but then helping an individual through, having taken somebody's life on a Tuesday. I could be walking that same mom through her court experience, but I could be supporting somebody emotionally through their own court experience. I can be healing the roots of particular kinds of violence, but also, therapy with an elderly woman who got caught in the crossfire, right? So like both sides of harm is what I was reluctant to do that kind of work for a long time because it's hard.
Recently, we've been talking internally about how like people can experience 2 emotions at one time. And so you can be both happy and angry, about the same situation, depending on what that is. And I don't want to get into the nuance of it because I am not a licensed clinical anything, but I like to call myself a kind of honorary therapist in some sense. But when we talk about this, there was a particular question that somebody asked you about why you started this. And I'd love for you to share that story, because I think it's a very kind of poignant moment where it's like, okay. And I think what I remember is that there wasn't anything there to kind of address that.
I was in a community meeting in Newark, New Jersey, and an individual, a community resident, came to the meeting, and I'm going to be graphic because there's no way to kind of get around how graphic it was for me.
Right.
But we want to be trauma-informed in the conversation. But so she came to the meeting and she asked the meeting, essentially, who do I call to clean brain matter off the sidewalk? And, they answered her. Right, like it's 800 number, whatever. Like they answered her, but even me had this is 20 years into my career. Like I am not desensitized to violence, and her even coming to this meeting to ask this question like disturbed me, and I was disturbed by the fact that we were even having this conversation, and I thought about all the community members who had walked by that morning. Right. And I also not personally knew who did that, right, to leave that on the sidewalk. But I kind of am familiar with their thought patterns as well. And so I was very taken aback, and I was so disturbed that I brought it to the correctional facility that night. And obviously they're not the ones responsible for that, right? But I basically said and I'm already coming in love and non-judgment, so I can beat them up when I want to. But I said I was in a community meeting today, and somebody asked how to clean brains off the sidewalk. Like that's not okay. Right. And they were very taken aback. Yeah. They had not considered what was left behind.
And let's just be clear, you're talking about people in the correctional justice system who are locked behind bars.
Correct.
Like the perpetrators of violence, or the alleged perpetrators of violence.
Correct. Yes. And so although multiple kinds of violence, but still and I don't necessarily even know their particular situations, but they also come from our community.
Right.
So they then, they have a lifestyle that could have theoretically led to something like that. Yeah. That she was asking the meeting about. And so I started with accountability. I hold, those who cause harm. And when I'm healing their emotional roots, right, I am not just like proverbially hugging them to death, right? Like I hold them accountable as well. And I think sometimes community gets that mistaken. Like just because we are healing a person does not necessarily mean that you're also not holding them accountable. And sometimes those who cause harm want to be held accountable and they're like, Ms. Berry, I knew the difference between right and wrong, right? Like I made a choice. True. Let's hold you accountable. No problem. But we can do healing work also at the same time, right? Healing is now your responsibility. And so now I'm holding you accountable to do your healing work in the first place. So that's kind of how I came to the conversation. And I'm like, look, like, this is imagine all the people walking by that this morning on the sidewalk, like, this is not okay, y'all. Like, this is not okay. And they immediately showed up with empathy. They showed up with awareness. They showed up with curiosity. They showed up with a posture of humility. They had really just not considered, even if they had never done, a shooting, but like they had never considered the ripple effect of violence. And how the violent incident ripples out and touches everyone.
Right.
It started there. The conversation then went to the first time they ever saw that on the sidewalk.
Is it that, in your opinion, that they're looking at it as, I would rather be the stronger one, which is often the person, let's say, who's holding the gun in terms of that particular scenario, than the one without it? I would rather not be laying out dead on the street and be the other guy who has the money, who has the cars, who has this kind of celebrity status in the neighborhood, but that also comes with doing things that they may not necessarily agree with.
Well, it's like, it's the where can I access power? Mm-hmm. Right? Because clearly the man on the sidewalk is powerless. I feel powerless in my neighborhood. When I am witnessing violence, hearing violence from my window, right? I'm powerless in my schools. I'm powerless in my home. I am powerless in every aspect of my life. And that guy looks powerful. He clearly looks powerless. And so I am going to seek power in the way that I believe will keep me safe.
Something's happening in your life. Your goal is to try to fix it.
Yeah.
And so
that's all of our goals.
Right. And so in some scenarios, and again, this is where we get into the nuances in the conversation and people's opinions and their moral compass of how do I best do this as quickly as I can? Right. And in some neighborhoods, what they see that they can access quickly is not necessarily the best thing for them or the best thing for the environment. Mm-hmm. And so I want to ask this question because I think we're kind of straddling it a little bit, but how do you contend with helping those people and then dealing with the people when they say, okay, well, you're also working with people who've caused harm, who've hurt people. And we know some people will say he's or she's unredeemable. That person is unredeemable. Why would you be wasting time on them?
Yeah. So I want to clarify another piece of language, which is 99% of offenders have been victimized. And I'm using those two words on purpose, right? Like I don't typically use the word offender. And victim, that's why we say like on both sides of harm or those who have caused harm versus their surrounding communities. Like we worked at least a year just on language, like at the Village Revival Project, right? Because we cannot say those who have caused harm and victims because that's implying that those who have caused harm have not been victimized. 99% of them have been victimized.
But that's not my question, right? I'm saying, how do you contend or what do you say to people? Or because, right,
well, that's a part of it, of what to say to them.
And, trauma-informed care and like clinical engagement. I have had a level of that training, obviously not to your degree. I don't have a degree in it, but we do that work. We talk about that language within this environment to people, but the world is the world. So like maybe is there a scenario where you've used the language you're using now and talking about this from this lens where people get it? And is it a leap for some people?
It would definitely be a leap, but it does start with language because in order to have empathy across the aisle, you do have to be, and I'm not saying you, but I'm saying whoever's listening, right? Like, we as a community have to be trauma informed. And like the other side of the aisle in this gap, this us versus them gap, in order to achieve empathy, we have to come to the understanding that 99% of offenders have been victimized. Now, that does not mean that 99% of victims offend. So then people are like, well, he hurt me and me and him went through the same trauma. We went through the same thing. So he chose or preferred a different way, which is right. But protective and risk factors, and again, I know you know this, but right, for the sake of the conversation, it has to be discussed at large with the community. Risk factors are the things that happen to us that are traumatic. Right. Protective factors are those things that are padding or buffers between me and my risk factors that allow me to thrive. For example, you are a walking protective factor. The Boys and Girls Club is a protective factor. These are things that insulate. So people often ask, well, why did these two brothers grow up in the same home and one went to college and one went to prison? And the one in prison says to me, right, like, well, there must be something wrong with me, Ms. Berry. Like, we all, like my brother, we grew up in the same neighborhood, the same home. We have the same risk factors. The difference is that he may have had eligibility for the Boys and Girls Club. He may have had a guidance counselor that took a particular interest in him. He may have been talented in a sport. So he had a particular coach that was interested in him. So yes, we are all exposed to these risk factors and we're all exposed to the traumas of our community. But a lot of us have protective factors to be able to buffer us, right? It's because all the kids on the block saw the same dead body. And all of them didn't end up in my class that night, right? But like protecting the risk factors have to be kind of explained in that way. That being said, it also helps the dialogue, but like you asked about how do we bring the surrounding community to the table and to ultimately improve interpersonal perceptions of each other. That is one of our goals at the Village of Iowa Project. One, we need folks to be trauma informed, so they attend workshops in phase 1 separately and just learn about trauma and the behavioral manifestation of trauma, right? Because if I told you, and this is not like an actual empirical data point, but this is a Miss Berry data point.
Yeah.
If I told you that 6 out of 10 shooters were sexually assaulted in childhood, would that change our approach?
I think it change people's perception. I think we see
because
that
we're seeking power
in the media. We see it in the media all the time, where somebody perpetrates and does something, or somebody commits a crime, and they say, "Oh, there's this history of X, Y, or Z."
Yeah,
and so I think we understand it. What I'm trying to understand is why we understand it. We sometimes say that, but we also then say this person or that person is unredeemable, which is kind of like, well, is anyone unredeemable from your perspective?
So, to the unredeemable piece, I just find from like a 90,000 foot view that if we don't really, the mission statement is to humanize the relationship between these two groups. At a certain point, if we continue to dehumanize each other and the community collectively continues to reject those who have caused harm and push them to the margins of society, it only perpetuates violence.
Yeah.
And so then they dehumanize the community. And then we gotta, well, Miss Berry, I didn't hurt her. I just took her car. No. Hey, no. She could not stop at a red light for a year after that, right? Like, no, she had nightmares. Like, you definitely harmed her. But at the point that society at large, this us versus them, pushes them to the margins, the rejection they feel from home, school, and neighborhood pushes them into a subset of culture that is violent.
When they were 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, they were already pushed into a group of people that had a higher potential, right? Because we both come from this neighborhood, this environment, Newark, New Jersey, and we know its history and there's been much improvement in the city. But there's a group of young people who've been, he's a bad kid, she's a bad kid, they're going to do this, they're going to become this. And so no one kind of grouped them before they had the opportunity. And one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking was I recently listened to a video on YouTube from a guy who was saying, no two kids grew up in the same household, even if they grew up in the same household.
Exactly.
How do you, right? And the Boys and Girls Club is one way to do that. But let's say me and my brother, and we both are doing fine, but let's say he or I went the wrong direction. How do we put protections in place in a home prior to that all going bad? Or is there a way to, you think, to prevent it at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old?
Well, so even though and I'm going to circle back to the redeeming piece, because even though the Village Revival Project only serves adults, right? We are serving adults who have formerly incarcerated. Right now, we're doing returning citizens. That is that group. And then surrounding community. At the point that, the surrounding community hears a returning citizen say, and I've heard it already, and this is kind of circling back to the story, I was the middleman that night. Right. And that's where the Village Revival Project really came from, because I was the middleman coming into the correctional facility, giving community perspectives, and beating them up, but hugging, doing the healing work as well. And then I come back outside, right? And I then speak to community. And so I said, I don't want to be the middleman. I'm going to remove myself and bring these two groups together so they can speak to each other. That being said, if, someone in the program hears a returning citizen say, I was not allowed to play with my cousins because even my own family said I was a bad kid. So I went to go play with the other bad kids, or I got expelled in kindergarten forever. Basically, some of these school stories are very problematic. Then what will happen is the 6-year-old who's at home will be then looked at differently because the aunt or the mom or the grandmom participated in the Village Revival Project. So no, the 6-year-old isn't in the room, but the ripple effect of the program most definitely will get back to that 6-year-old.
So what happens when these two groups of people come together?
So they attend the workshops separately to become trauma informed. Then they come together for an art-based transformative justice dialogue. I say transformative justice is not restorative justice. It's not a one-sided apology, because as we've now delved into, they harmed each other. And this became a cyclical pattern of harm that only perpetuated the issue at hand. So they come together and have dialogue through art, where they humanize each other. And our goal is not to heal each other per se, or forgive each other, reconcile, all of those words. We kind of decided, like, we are here to improve interpersonal perceptions. Just see me, hear me, feel me, right? Because if at the point that we could see each other, then phase 3, they take their art and they push it out to the community at large and we do multiple different art mediums. So we do fine arts, theater, photography, and music poetry. And so they'll push their art out to community, which is ultimately building social cohesion. Like, we are not, and we had to make this decision along the way, like, we are not a violence intervention program. We are building social cohesion through art. And I believe that social cohesion will reduce violence, but that is not one of our metrics. We can't, take credit for violence in a neighborhood coming down because of VRP. We're trying to build social cohesion. And then after they push it out to the community at large, the audience, as well as the participants, phase 4 is they do a working group, like a resident working group, where they work on policy together. And so they say, we're from this neighborhood together. We now see each other, hear each other, feel each other. We understand the impact that each other's actions had. And this traffic light is out, and we want to fix this traffic light. And so they use their leadership skills to, win.
So the goal isn't to, reduce violence as a focus, but as a byproduct through this effort. So in 5 years from today, what kinds of impacts do you want to see that the Village Revival Project has had on the community?
Yeah, so we definitely are prepared to measure all of this. So I know it sounds like squishy and magical, but we do have metrics and we do have empirical research to back up, for example, social cohesion. There are ways to measure social cohesion. And so even coming back to the redeemable piece, at a certain point, if we don't do this, if we don't reach across the aisle, there shouldn't even be an aisle.
Right.
At this point. And also these individuals who cause harm aren't coming from another community coming here. They're our brothers, our uncles, our boyfriends, right? Like, and girls too. It's like, it's not just, now Village Revival Project is only doing male returning citizens, but these are our family members and our community members. So these are our neighbors. And so at a certain point, like, to just be able to see each other, if, the closest people to the problem are the closest to the solution, and the public should be in public safety.
Right.
And at a certain point,
100%, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And at a certain point, like, if we don't hear each other, feel each other, see each other, and bring these folks back from the margin, then, like, when it comes to, like, are they redeemable? It's more so like, my answer is yes. I wouldn't be doing this work if it wasn't. My answer is yes. All people are redeemable, and we are all one decision away from incarceration, right? And we are not our worst decision, right? Like, we've all made bad decisions. Good people make bad decisions all the time.
That's true. So I have a number of questions. I'm trying to figure out which one within the time that we have I should be asking. And so what I want to ask, because you have an interesting concept around the Village Revival Project, which is called a revivalist. What is a revivalist? Can you share with the people what that is?
Technically, I would say it's ambassadors of our program. So you can come into the fold and you can volunteer. You can connect us to resources, connect us to people you think we should know. You can bring your skill set to our movement. Like, technically, it's that. More not technically, is to bring this message. Like, even if you didn't get involved with the program at all and you just hear this conversation, and you invite that young person who the family deemed bad to Thanksgiving,
right?
You are a revivalist just because you had this conversation, like, to speak to our neighbors. You are a revivalist at that point. Like, we are trying to restore the collective heartbeat of the village, because clearly it's fractured and clearly we're not breathing together. Although, to your point, we've made dramatic gains in the city of Newark through public showing up in public safety. But being a revivalist means love your neighbor, see your neighbor, speak to your neighbor. If all of us do our part to become more socially cohesive, like, we would be a lot better off for sure.
So here's a question. Again, I think this probably should have been like a 3-hour-long conversation, because I have a whole bunch of questions. And some of them are just me playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, please.
But so life in prison. And from your perspective and thinking about the humanization of an individual, right? Somebody commits an act, they get sentenced to life in prison. Is that dehumanizing? If it's not, how do you humanize someone and get them healing, knowing that they're going to not survive outside of that environment?
I am definitely anti-death penalty, for sure, because the government should not have a right to take the life of anyone. In regards to life in prison, unfortunately, like, prisons are not rehabilitative in nature. Like, they don't offer the amount of treatment that folks need to then be released as a healthy, whole person.
It's a statement that many people have made, right? You're not the first person who said that. You're not the only person who believes that. Do you believe it's possible, and do you think, let's say in human history, that it will ever get to a point where correctional facilities will be designed in a way that actually produces rehabilitation at large?
I think, right, that's a very loaded question.
Some people get rehabilitated, right? You hear the story. We've seen those individuals. They come out. They serve their time. They come out. They become productive citizens. They start businesses. They go to work. They contribute. Whatever. Redeemables, right? So, but do you think the system can get there as it exists today, or can it be changed in a way that's possible?
I do a lot of organizing work to, mitigate the impact of systemic racism. So, like, systemic racism is so layered and so intricate and so by design that, like, prison is a big part of that. Like, the new Jim Crow is so by design, and there's so much money being made off Black and brown bodies that, like, Will it ever get there? I mean, we have to dismantle systemic racism. And yes, I will fight all my days trying to dismantle these systems.
So what about someone who says
the systems have too much to benefit from?
That doesn't exist in the way that you're talking about it. That has changed. That's not.
And this is a whole nother thing.
And again, I don't want to get political at all, but right.
Yeah.
Because I think what I always look at is like there's two sides to everything. And there are some people who think about a situation in a particular way, and there are other people who say it's like this and it's not like that. And I think that's happening in the news. It's happening in our political environments, the kind of where you say, like, you know, we were talking about politics earlier. We're not going to talk about politics now, but how, you know, a lot of groups, you know, let's say just Republicans, Democrats, or where they're not communicating, there's this aisle that's in between them. How do we get beyond that? Right. Like so if this thing has been set up, let's say that that's the truth, 100% it's set up. There's a redesign of the old legal system that was on the books. Can it happen? Do you see it happening, or do we see this constant circular uphill climb?
Shout out to Equal Justice USA. They had a trauma trust program here in the city of Newark for many years. And one of the videos that they showed in that program was it literally, you just type systemic racism video in YouTube. And it's a little cartoon, 4 minutes long, about, you know, these two boys that grow up in different circumstances and how it impacts them in the long run. I would just advise folks to watch that, because if you think that like some of, and also racism doesn't necessarily mean black or white at this point. Like, yeah. So I would say to educate ourselves on the meaning of systemic racism, to understand how it does show up still. And then see what you can do to mitigate the impact of that. Because yes, we definitely can do many things on a daily basis to mitigate that impact in our communities, for sure.
Yeah. These conversations don't happen enough. And so I think it's important. So I want to give you the platform to share, you know, whatever else you'd like to about the Village Revival Project, about what you do, about what you've been doing for a long time, because I've seen it. I've known it. We've worked together here at Boys and Girls Club as younger peoples.
Yeah, younger people.
Right now. No one person, I have my children on my desk. So please.
Yeah. So I would just say two things. One, based on what you last just said, is when it comes to those who have been harmed, right? Like the surrounding community that has been harmed, it's important to remember that like being a survivor and how you respond as a survivor is on a continuum. Like they are not a monolith. They are not a monolith. Like survivors of violence are not a monolith. And a lot of times court does not offer you what would make you feel better. And some survivors don't want a court process. Some survivors do want a court process. Some survivors do want the death penalty. Some survivors want to sit down with the person they were harmed by and ask why, right? Like some survivors want to paint with the person who took their family member. Like survivors are not a monolith. And so I think it's our job to meet them where they are as well, because we cannot assume that they all want court and they all want the death penalty. The Village Revival Project offers a alternative that I think is a missing gap in our public safety ecosystem, right? Like no one is necessarily offering this kind of support. And if you want this kind of support, then come on, right? Like come do this and it will be safe and it will be skilled by skilled practitioners, right? Like and you can get what you need from this if you're not getting it from some of these other systems. So that's kind of one. And then two, so we are grounded on the proverb, the African proverb, a child not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And that drives our curriculum, that drives our mission. Like that is the pinnacle, like piece of this mission. And we define village as home, school, and neighborhood. Folks were not embraced. And then we're burning behaviors looking for warmth. Warmth being love, belonging, safety, acceptance, a whole lot of different things, but looking for warmth. The fact is that everyone burns, whether you're burning violently or not, right? Like being passive aggressive is a burning behavior. Interrupting somebody in a staff meeting is burning behavior. Right? You betraying or like you like not clocking in for lunch, right? Because I'm just saying like there's a lot of behaviors that are burning behaviors and everyone is looking for warmth. And sometimes we're really attached to like revenge and retaliation, but that's because anger is a part of grief.
Right.
And I'm not only talking about death, right? Like if I lost my sense of safety in my neighborhood, that is grief. I may feel angry about that. But at a certain point, like we're going to have to come together and figure this out as a community. Because like, if not, if we keep in this direction and we don't like pour resources into us, then like violence will continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for that. And I want to get us to smile a little bit more. So this is kind of like, we call it a blitz round, but we don't like force people to go too fast, but we like you not to think too deeply. We want the first thing that pops into your head. Okay. So what's your favorite food?
Sushi.
Go-to comfort food?
Popcorn and peanut M&Ms.
Is that your favorite snack on a night in front of the television, or is there something else? Guilty pleasure.
Good. You go faster. Is that the guilty pleasure?
Is it?
That's
yeah.
I guess.
Popcorn and M&M?
Yeah. Peanut M&M.
Peanut M&M. Those are my favorite too. I don't do the chocolate one. Sometimes I might do the peanut butter every now and then because I like a Reese's peanut butter stuff. What song always gets you hyper in your feelings?
And in my feelings, it would be like a gospel song. It's a particular gospel song.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
To cure violence.
But like Superman or like Wonder Woman, like fly, like...
My superhero would be global peace. If I could snap my finger.
Like Captain Planet almost?
I'm not good with those. And I don't know all the superheroes.
You know Captain Planet? Captain Planet, he's a hero going to take pollution down to zero? Oh, God. No.
Oh, man.
You got to get your childhood back. But it's okay. What's something that makes you laugh no matter what?
Just people saying the darndest thing.
Kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love kids.
But grown kids, too. Grown kids say the darndest things.
Oh, I can just imagine. Pepsi or Coke?
Pepsi.
Apple or Android?
Apple.
Favorite place to vacation?
Morocco.
Where's one place you want to go that you haven't been?
I would say like either Ghana or South Africa. But they're long flights.
They are. Hawaii's long too. If you could meet one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Malcolm X.
What does Newark mean to you?
It's my heart. It's my heartbeat. Yeah.
Your best friend would say about you?
Pure-hearted.
If you had all the money in the world, other than violence and world peace, to change anything
you can't manipulate the blitz questions.
In Newark, America, the world, what would it be?
Like I would fund like healing programs across the world. And like, because this social cohesion thing can be global, right? Like there are groups that have division across the world, but like to fund healing programming, if I had all the money in the world, like I would make everybody would be good. They would have so many protective factors.
There we go.
Yeah.
We need protective factors.
Yeah.
So this is the part where you get to ask me anything you like, as long as it's not politically charged. I will answer it. We are a apolitical organization. So, yeah. But if there's not, I'll just...
I'm good. You asked me.
I did
this today. I would like to know, but can I circle back? Not
or wherever you want to. Sure. It could be anything.
I would like to know, well, as partners, right? What is your approach as the visionary of Boys and Girls Club to be able, like, what is your experience as a revivalist and the need for revival?
We try to meet kids where they are when they're young, and we try to help put those risk protections in for them as well as their families. Right? When I grew up here at the club, it was 99.9% just for kids. It's recreation. You come in, you play, you run in the gym. But what our organization, and not just me, but people before me, people now, the people that work here now, recognize that our families need more than just recreation and the place for kids to go. They need workshops. They need to understand where resources are. We learned that we needed to have social workers and licensed clinical professionals and one-on-one clinical counseling support here. We need to have dental support here because it was the second leading cause of school absences, and young people and other people were dying from something that was easily handled with access to dental care, right? So Dr. Michael Gruber, who's one of our board members, said, hey, we need to have a dental clinic at the Boys and Girls Club, and it's here. What we think about now is how do we address trauma and help educate people about that so that they understand that how we used to support kids and how we used to deal with children doesn't necessarily work. And the things we used to do that people say, you got to be tough, you got to do this, that doesn't work for everyone. And everybody doesn't respond to those things the same way. So while hard-nosed, kind of in your face, activity may work for a young person. It may help them be the thing that changes. It may make other kids bottle up. It may make other kids fearful. It may make other kids aggressive. And so things like spanking and things and corporal punishment used to be fine in these kinds of environments 90 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, right? You always hear the stories about, the nun at the Catholic Church hitting a kid with a ruler. But we've known through research, through looking at things, through looking at behavior, that these kinds of things don't work for kids necessarily. Some kids don't respond to it. You learn that when kids are very small, they get hit early. And so those kinds of things make us think, how do we show up properly for individuals, regardless of who they are, regardless of where they come from, to give people the best platform for their emotional health, for their mental health, for their physical health, so that they get to go out in the world and choose how to operate, right? And not us tell people this is what you have to, and this is what you're supposed to do. Our job, in my opinion, is to help solve for those things before they happen as much as we can, because we get kids at 5. We can talk to their parents, we can engage them, we can, get them in one-on-one experience, group sessions and things like that. And so I think where you're doing the work when, right, things have already happened, those risk protections weren't in place, or things were missed, or this kid fell into something, they made a poor choice, an adult made a poor choice. And how do you help those people come back? Because I think as a society, we've been grappling with it, and laws have been passed, reentry programs. How do we make sure that people don't go back to prison? They don't commit another act that's going to ruin their lives and somebody else. I'm right there with you, and, kids are fun, but they're also more malleable in some ways around certain aspects of things, and they're able to kind of help formulate things. And when kids are young, they don't have all those pent up opinions about who and what this person is versus this. And I think it's taught and it's learned over time. And people read what they want to read. And I think ultimately there's no control factors that guarantees anything, but as much as you can put things in place that will help maximize the potential for a young person not to do something that's going to destroy their life or someone else's. I think that's the most important thing any society can do. So I thank you for the work that you're doing. Yeah. I want to say, and I think I said most of what I would have said at the end, is that the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because it's been a thing that has been discussed in our community. I've seen violence when I was a young person. I've dealt with young people who were experiencing violence, who were choosing gangs. And luckily, places like the Boys and Girls Club existed in those neighborhoods, and individuals like myself, like Alia Berry, like the many people who work here and who worked in our organization and other community organizations, have been able to help young people and their families improve their lives, choose a different path so that they don't end up in the justice system, whether it's juveniles or adults. And so we work collectively to try to ensure that anyone in our community, whether they're a law-abiding citizen, someone who's dealt with being inside of the prison system, in the court system, can have an opportunity to explore who they are, what they've done, what they may have potentially done, and what has happened to other people, because there's always two sides to a coin. Everyone has a story. And as much as we can, put activities and opportunities for people to develop themselves and their mindsets and change the way they think, particularly if those are things that lead to destructive behavior. So I thank you for what you do. I thank the Boys and Girls Club for being here for me. And we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we look to see more. Feel free to check out our other episode from our young people on the Stamp platform here at Boys and Girls Club in Newark. They talked about mass incarceration as a topic of advocacy that they wanted to focus on because it's a topic that they were passionate about. They talked about those kind of things. They talked about the prison system, the court system, and they were fortunate enough to have an assistant prosecutor here who dealt in the juvenile justice system, police officer, as well as another nonprofit community leader. And they put me on the podcast, even though I wasn't supposed to be on it. So it was a great conversation. It's a great conversation. So thank you for being
Thank you for the opportunity.
No.
And thank you for your vision.
My pleasure.
The way you're doing this and the prevention work and tailoring and customizing it like you just described. But you're an awesome visionary, and you're an asset to the community.
I appreciate that.
And appreciate our partnership.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll be back for another exciting episode of the Great Futures Force here at Boys and Girls Club in Newark. I'm your host and CEO, Amir Washington. Until next time, be good to yourself and be good to others, and seek the help you need if ever you deem it necessary, or if someone maybe sees something that's happening for you. Take an opportunity to go meet and talk with someone like Ms. Berry, who is a professional in this, and someone like me who's an honorary professional and mental behavioral health support. And if I can't answer your question, I'll get you somebody who can. Thank you.